He calls on Zelensky to implement the Minsk agreements and, in essence, is thereby carrying out Putin's will. And here Putin faces an interesting dilemma, a very interesting dilemma, to shoot it down or not to shoot it down. And so the ophthalmologist, without expecting it himself, becomes a dictator. Trump was corruptly linked to Russia. The entire world raised this monster, nurtured it, and brought it up. Good afternoon, everyone. You are on Sergei Lyubarsky's YouTube channel. Today the calendar shows the 24th of August, and today marks 6 months since Russia treacherously attacked Ukraine, destroying along its path tens of thousands of innocent people. By this day, the Washington Post has published a massive document that it titled The Road to War, in which the Washington Post presents its view of what led to this war. But I will not be commenting on the Washington Post. Instead, I will share my own view and my own understanding of the road to war, of what led to this horrific, inhumane catastrophe. In American English, there is a term, gaslighting. It is when you are persuaded not to believe what you see, but to believe what you are told. Today, we will try to debunk this and lift the veil from the eyes of millions of people who have fallen victim to this gaslighting. This did not happen by accident. In today's rather long program, I will present facts and I will refrain from commentary as much as it is possible for me to refrain. So, let us go through the chronology of events that led to this war. Let us go through the road to war. I will begin with August 2008. The final 6 months of the Bush presidency. And in August 2008, Russia attacks Georgia. From the White House, there is practically no response. Russia annexes Georgia, part of Georgia, virtually with impunity. The administration of Barack Obama is elected, and Hillary Clinton becomes Secretary of State. And in September 2009, 1 year after the annexation of part of Georgia, Hillary Clinton announces a reset. Hillary Clinton and Sergei Lavrov are shown exchanging smiles like two happy children.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. We worked hard to get the right Russian word. You think we got it?
You get it wrong.
I got it wrong.
It should be перезагрузка. And this says перегрузка, which means overcharge.
Well, we won't let you do that.
They are holding a wonderful toy with the word reset written on it. They clutch this reset, posing for thousands of photographers. This symbolizes above all that Russia was not punished for its aggression and got away with it. The world forgot the Georgian War. The world swept this horror under the rug of history. Relations were reset, and Putin took this as a call to action. In October 2011, Muammar Gaddafi is killed. Putin is deeply shaken. Muammar Gaddafi was a bloody dictator, a terrorist, with thousands of his own citizens' lives on his hands, and hundreds of lives lost as a result of terrorist attacks that he sponsored and ordered. But when, in 2003, he saw Saddam Hussein fall, he, Muammar Gaddafi, popped out like a jack-in-the-box. He handed over all his weapons to Europe and knew that he would never again do harm or mischief, that he would be a peaceful, compliant, well-behaved, professional dictator. But nevertheless, this did not save him. As Hillary Clinton later put it, we came, we saw, he died. And in October 2011, he died a terrible death. He died from the handle of a shovel, which caused massive internal bleeding in the large intestine, an instructive, shameful, horrific death. His body was abused for a long time afterward. Even after death, it was mocked. All of this was captured on video. Putin saw it. And if Putin had even a shred of respect or trust for the West, he lost it completely. And when Victoria Nuland appeared in Kyiv in 2014, Putin saw the signs of a shovel on the wall. March 2012, Obama and Medvedev meet. They do not know that the microphone is still on. And after the conference, Obama leans forward toward Medvedev and literally says the following: "These are my last elections. After the election, I will have more flexibility. Pass this on to Vladimir." And Medvedev, upon hearing this, bows servilely, nods his head, and says, "I will pass it on to Vladimir."
My last election, after my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah, I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir and stand with me.
September 2012. The debates between Obama and Romney take place, Romney being a candidate from the Republican Party. And Obama practically mocks Romney, who called Russia the main geopolitical threat of modern times. I quote Obama. "A few months ago, when you were asked what the greatest geopolitical threat facing America was, you said Russia, not Al-Qaeda, you said Russia. It seems you are trying to bring foreign policy back to the 1980s and the Cold War. You do not understand what is happening in the world. You are incompetent. Look at all of this through Putin's eyes." In 2012, Obama practically sends him an air kiss, saying bluntly that after the election he will change things for the better, have more flexibility, allow Putin more aggression in Europe. And in that same 2012, during the debates, which Putin undoubtedly and unquestionably watched, Putin is told that Putin's Russia, the Putin regime, is not a threat from Obama's point of view to Europe, while the threat is Al-Qaeda. Who remembers Al-Qaeda now? Where was it? When was it? Probably the most important moment in Putin's decision to go to war was September 2013, the so-called failure of Obama's position on the Red Line. Therefore, it is worth explaining this in a bit more detail. And so, once upon a time, there lived a wonderful ophthalmologist. He lived in the city of London. He was a devoted family man. He treated people's eyes. And it so happened that his older brother was in an accident. In Monte Carlo, he flew off a cliff in his red Ferrari. There was a beautiful girl sitting there with him. Malicious tongues claimed that the girl's head was found under the steering wheel of the car when the wreckage was being cleared. Be that as it may, this older brother of the ophthalmologist died. And it was precisely the older brother of the ophthalmologist who was supposed to become the dictator of Syria. He did not become one. He died. They had to pull out the spare from the reserve compartment, the spare wheel known as Bashar Assad. And so the ophthalmologist, without expecting it himself, becomes a dictator. In the first years of his presidency, he tries to bring his own understanding of democracy into Syria's public and political sphere. He stages referendums. He tries to expand rights, grants women the right to vote. Local wise men explain to him that this is not how things are done. This is not London, my friend. This is the East, and the East is a delicate matter. But he keeps playing his own tune and drives the country to the brink of a civil war, realizing that he himself, his family, his government, and the Alawite minority he represents will be physically destroyed. He then changes his policy by 180 degrees and uses chemical weapons to prevent civil clashes. Barack Obama warns him about the consequences of such actions. What does our ophthalmologist do? Our ophthalmologist, Bashar Assad, flies to Moscow, spends 2 days in Moscow, returns, and demonstratively uses chemical weapons again to destroy his own population. And the words of Barack Obama when he said that this was a red line, crossing which meant there was no return to the previous reality, and that Russia's actions in committing such violations would have consequences, completely evaporated. Instead of carrying out some act of retribution, Barack Obama goes to Congress and the Senate, and all of this gets bogged down and blurred in endless delays. Vladimir Putin understands that the path is open. Open for what? The path is open for the annexation of Crimea. He waits for half a year, and in 2014, polite green little men annex Crimea. No retribution follows, no military counteraction from the White House. What follows, as we know, are very weak sanctions, which were once very aptly characterized by Skabieva. She said it like this: sanctions were imposed on us, and we imposed them on them. It is unclear whether on them meant the sanctions themselves or those who imposed them. Further aggression followed in April 2014, and the beginning of the war in Donbass. Russia continues the annexation of Ukraine in Donbass, supplying weapons, military personnel, and all necessary military assistance to Donbass. Ukraine asks America for military aid in order to level the odds. And the White House, with Barack Obama in it, completely refuses to provide such lethal weapons. Jumping ahead, throughout the entire Obama administration, Ukraine received neither cartridges nor bullets, neither mines nor shells, no lethal weapons at all. As a matter of principle, Barack Obama did not want to provide them. July 2014, the downing of Flight MH17. Putin confuses and misleads the entire world. It was shot down by a Ukrainian fighter jet. It was shot down by aliens. It was not us. The bodies were not fresh. There is a completely irresponsible, absurd deception of the whole world. And at the same time, in the White House, there are satellite images that unequivocally and beyond any doubt show the launch site, the launch time, and the trajectory of the missile. Why do we know this? Because since the beginning of the military conflict, a satellite has been hanging over the conflict zone, recording everything in real time. For a moment, the entire conflict is being filmed by a satellite, and everything can be seen. And Putin, of course, knows about this satellite. But knowing that the White House is not presenting any information to the world and is keeping silent, that the White House is silent about the aggression that has taken place and about the fact that the Russian Federation bears direct responsibility, Putin understands how afraid the White House is of him. June 2015. The Senate and the House of Representatives pass a law on supplying weapons to Ukraine. Obama blocks this law. That is, a law already passed by the Senate and Congress on providing weapons in June 2015 is deliberately blocked by Obama. Putin knows this. July 2016. This very oldest city in the world. The pearl of world history. A city in which civilization has existed for 6,000 years. The city of Aleppo was completely destroyed to the ground. Not a stone was left standing. Tens of thousands were killed. No use of force, no punishment, no condemnation, not even sanctions came from the White House. The whole world forgot about Aleppo. Please remember Aleppo. Remember the Civil War. Remember that along this road, the entire world, led by the White House, walked for a very long time. This did not happen 6 months before the start of the war. It happened over many years. The whole world raised this crocodile, this alligator, this monster. It was carefully nurtured and brought up. Spring 2017, power changes hands. In January 2017, Trump comes to power. Through his agent Danchenko, a certain Steele receives a dossier that is nothing more than a disinformation operation fabricated by the KGB of the USSR, by the FSB of the Russian Federation. Disinformation moves through the Danchenko-Steele-Hillary Clinton channels. Such is the chain by which these documents are passed along. This is presented as sufficient grounds, first of all, for, during the election campaign, this led to surveillance and wiretapping of Trump and his campaign team. And then, after Trump was elected, this fake piece of paper, in which there is not a single word of truth, became the basis for launching an investigation into Trump that lasted 3 years, the so-called Mueller investigation. The Democratic Party of America deceived the entire world by claiming that Trump had corrupt ties with Russia. There is not a single second of truth in any of this. But who knows this better than anyone else? Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, who orchestrated this operation. He understands that political discord is unfolding in America because he planted this poison and the Democrats swallowed it. He understands how weak the political facade or the political climate in America is. Any actions by Trump to change the security system in Europe are perceived as gestures toward Putin. Trump demands that European states pay 2% toward their own defense, which corresponds to their obligations under NATO provisions, and this is described as Trump wanting to destroy NATO for Putin's benefit. That is, demanding an increase in defense spending is described as Trump wanting to destroy NATO for Putin's benefit. Trump demands that they stop, by they, meaning the European countries, primarily Germany, buying energy resources from Russia and end their dependence on Russia. He demands this personally. This is documented in numerous records, including records from Merkel. And all of this is described by the press, the American press, as Trump destroying our relations with our European allies. He is acting in Russia's interest. The only thing that could not be pinned on Trump as acting in Russia's interest was the fact that he lowered the price of oil from an average of $100 per barrel under Obama to an average of $50 per barrel under Trump. That is, when oil fell from 100 to 50, it completely clipped the wings of our Kremlin eagle, and he had to sit quietly for all 4 of those years and not chirp, because you cannot really wage war at $50 per barrel. Yes. The only canvas on which this war is painted is the price of oil. The price of oil falls, and Putin, his military machine, his war apparatus, shrivels. The price of oil rises, and Putin attacks Ukraine, just as he attacked Georgia, just as he annexed Crimea. All of these actions and acts were carried out during periods of high oil prices. Oil goes to a peak, Putin attacks. Oil goes down, Putin sits and waits. But that is not all that Trump managed to do during his presidency with regard to the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. In April 2017, Russian forces are guarding Syrian airspace. About a dozen S-300 and S-400 batteries are deployed there. What follows is a typical Putin-style gangster shakedown, a test of nerve, a kind of probe to see whether the mark will blink. In April 2017, Trump has been in power for 3 months, and Bashar Assad does what Bashar Assad, our family ophthalmologist, does best. He nervously sprays nerve agent gas from airplanes on his own people, and Putin sits and watches what the reaction from Trump will be. So what is Trump's reaction? They call Shoigu and say that they, meaning the Americans, are about to carry out a missile strike on the Shayrat air base. The airfield will be destroyed, and they ask that the Russians remove their people from there so that they are not accidentally killed, because that would be unpleasant. And here Putin faces an interesting dilemma, a very interesting dilemma. To shoot them down or not to shoot them down. He learns the timing, learns the target, learns the location. The S-300 and S-400 systems are perfectly capable of shooting down the Tomahawk missiles launched from a carrier. And the question is whether to shoot them down and risk an escalation of the conflict or not to shoot them down. And in this game of blinking, Putin blinked first. He pulled his personnel out. He did, in fact, inform the Syrians. They pulled their personnel out as well. They did not even have time to remove the aircraft. A missile strike was carried out. 60 missiles were launched at the Shayrat air base. 20 aircraft were destroyed, one of the most successful strikes by the American government. Putin, quite simply, chickened out. And as a result, from that moment on, the diversionary and provocative activity of the so-called LNR-DNR significantly decreases. That is, it does not stop completely, but the activity of the LNR-DNR along the border with Ukraine is reduced. In December 2017, the first shipment of lethal weapons signed off by Trump arrives in Ukraine. From Putin's side, there is no act of retaliation. In February 2018 comes the so-called Deir ez-Zor episode. This was the first direct confrontation between the armed forces of the United States and Russia since the Korean War of 1953. This episode went down in history under the phrase, "We are not there." What happened? In February 2018, an agreement had been reached under which America controlled the northeastern part of Syria and Russia controlled the southwestern part. All of this was divided along a river, so that there would not even be the possibility of direct military confrontation. Despite this agreement, Russia violated it, sets up a pontoon bridge across that very river, crosses to the other side, and tries to seize an oil facility. This is very Russian in its own charming way. The Pentagon personally calls Shoigu and says that this is a violation of the agreement. Shoigu replies that he knows nothing about it, that they are not there. And here Trump demonstrated the power, anger, and fury of modern American weapons. A hail of precisely guided missiles rained down on the column of armored personnel carriers and tanks. Within 2 minutes, every military vehicle was hit, turning into hot metal, into this terrifying plasma of burning people. 2 Apache attack helicopters hovered above them, remotely piloted by joystick. Somewhere in Oklahoma, 2 girls were sitting, and with a 12.5mm heavy machine gun, they were shredding everything that crawled out of there. Official figures are concealed by both sides, but according to unverified yet fairly reliable data, out of 400 to 460 people who were in that military column, now called a BTG, a battalion tactical group, only 60 survived, badly wounded and severely psychologically traumatized. Those 60 went through hell. After February 2018, the activity of the so-called rebels in the DNR and LNR republics was practically frozen to absolute zero, that is, to extremely low temperatures. Ukraine breathed freely. May 2018, Nord Stream 2. A duplicate of Nord Stream 1, a gas pipeline intended to increase the volume of Russian gas supplies to Germany, is blocked by the White House. A huge victory for the Trump administration. He fought over this for more than a year, and he won. October 2018, modern joint military exercises between the United States and Ukraine. These exercises were never mentioned by either Russian or American propaganda. I personally witnessed these exercises. By chance, fate brought me to the city of Khmelnytsky in October 2018. I was staying in a hotel together with American pilots. They had been redeployed from Romania. I asked them during breakfast. We were sitting there having breakfast. They were, of course, in civilian clothes. It was very funny. They all walk with perfect military bearing. They address each other, "Yes, sir," but they are wearing jeans and leather jackets. Sitting at breakfast in the hotel with one of the American military pilots, I asked him how close they flew to the Russian border. He smiled and said, "How close? As close as I am sitting to you." There was no retaliation, no act of retribution from Russia. So let us finish with Trump's legacy. Despite all the sweet talk about Putin being the leader of a great nation, a wonderful leader whom Russians should be proud of, Russia did not carry out a single global terrorist act. Russia did not commit a single act of aggression against Ukraine. The price of oil fell to $45 to $50 per barrel during Trump's presidency, completely depriving Russia of the ability to wage any kind of war. And then Biden came. Biden came and restored order. February 2021, the first month of Biden's actions, he signals the end of Trump's energy policy. He introduces new restrictions on oil production. His own position, his cabinet, his administration say that the classic old black energy has come to an end, and now green energy will flourish. Oil prices rise. This is even before any war. Prices go from 50 to 100 before any war at all. They rise solely because the White House signals the end of the era of oil and gas. Investments in oil and gas production fall from $2.5 billion a year to $1.5, that is, by 40%. Accordingly, against this background, oil prices rise. The market expects an oil shortage, which is exactly what happens. June 2021, the White House freezes military aid to Ukraine. That is the military aid that was approved under Trump, that was signed under Trump and was ready for delivery in June. The White House freezes it as a gesture of goodwill toward Putin. Ukraine is once again left without weapons. May 2021, Biden calls Putin a killer. This is in relation to the poisoning of Navalny. But at the same time, he agrees to meet with him in June, and precisely by that June, freezes those very oil supplies. After that, he spends a long time praising Putin for making a huge contribution to the fight against global warming. Third, after the so-called Red Line crisis, this is the decisive event that leads to the war. August 2021, the withdrawal from Afghanistan in UFA, which demonstrates complete incompetence. It shows the entire world, and Putin in particular, how weak our new president is. November 2021. Bill Burns flies to Moscow, meets with Putin's administration, and conducts talks with Putin by phone. He is told point blank that in January-February there will be a war with Ukraine, and that no sanctions, no weapons deliveries, in other words, no response will follow. And indeed, from November 2021, when Putin personally told the director of the CIA, Bill Burns, that there would be a war, nothing followed. If this is not untying a criminal's hands, then on December 24th, pay attention to the date, one day before American Christmas, the Biden administration publicly comes out and calls on Ukraine to join in and implement the Minsk agreements. That is, on December 24th, before going on vacation, this was so important for Biden that he called on Zelensky to implement the Minsk agreements and, in essence, in this sense, carried out Putin's will. This is how the White House responded to the unequivocal threat of war, as we now know from an article in the Washington Post. January 13th, 2022. War is inevitable. The White House knows this perfectly well, and nevertheless Biden demands the lifting of the ban on Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 2 is opened, and it is expected that in February it will begin operating. January 19th, 2022, 30 days remain until the war. At a press conference, Biden makes strange remarks. At the time, I thought that, as usual, he had said something wrong. Now I understand that this was a message addressed to Putin. He says the following: A minor incursion into Ukraine by Russia will not provoke a reaction from the West. End quote. That is, understanding that a large-scale war is coming, he tries to persuade Putin to reduce the scale of aggression in exchange for immediate forgiveness. This is what happened on January 19, 2022. Putin understands how weak the West is, how weak Biden is. And exactly 6 months ago, on February 24th of this year, Putin invaded Ukraine. A bloody war began. Trump was by no means a political genius, but against the background of Barack Obama and Biden, he looks like some kind of political titan. Against the backdrop of these two pygmies, such a far from perfect politician as Trump looks like a political giant. Obama and Biden represent complete political ignorance, a lack of understanding of many political nuances. It was their sheer cowardice in the face of the aggressor that led to this war. Their desire to appease the aggressor, combined with the inconsistency of their foreign policy and the rise in oil prices, led to this war.